Hey everybody, Steven here, and today looking at my repaired ROG Ally. So this broke a couple weeks ago. It's something that's been plaguing a lot of people, which is the micro SD card reader running into thermal issues. And so the representative here said under certain thermal stress conditions, the SD card reader may malfunction. Now this is an article from PC Gamer, but this highlight here says after confirmation from internal testing under certain thermal stress conditions, this may malfunction. To alleviate the issue, they're going to release an update to further fine tune the default and minimum fan speeds. And then they're going to work on some other updates as well, but you can do an RMA on this if you're having an issue, which is what I ended up doing. And this is actually the piece of paper right here saying that that was the issue. So I do like the fact that they've given me a write-up on this. I've done repairs with other companies, and specifically MSI, they don't send you any information on what they actually repaired. That's something that always bothers me, but I did want to test this out. My ROG Ally, I had played that for in the ballpark of like 40 to 50 hours before this happened. Ran a bunch of different tests, tried to workshop it on my own. The biggest thing was I knew that the micro SD card was failing, so I ended up getting a new one, and then that one was having issues. I tried that one on a separate card, so I knew it was working. I figured the one that I had, something happened to it. I think it actually, just because of those thermal issues, potentially just kind of fried it, because I've tried that on my regular PC and my other handhelds, and it won't work at all now. Now, some other things I wanted to point out from this article. One was that some people on Reddit were reporting that turning on core isolation in Windows was actually helping to get this to work again, so something that you might try. The other thing here is that Asus says that there is a measure to alleviate this issue on the way in the form of an update that fine-tunes the fan curves to improve reliability. That's something another YouTuber was actually trying themselves. If this doesn't actually fix this problem, though, they're going to have to potentially look at a redesign, is what they are saying in this article, the writer here, which makes sense. And I always thought that when I first started trying this, I was like, man, the top of this thing gets so hot. And it is by not only the micro SD card reader, but you have the top power button, you have your input for their eGPU. I mean, you have this stuff up top, and I don't know. I don't have anything to test how hot it's getting, but it's like hot to the touch. And a lot of handhelds are hot. I'm not saying that's not the case, but this is like it burns your hand. The other ones are warm, but this is literally just hot. And so right now I am trying to format the SSD that I had in there previously, and it's not working. So this is where I'm like, okay, this thing is just fried. It's not going to work at all. So I wanted to test the other SD card that I actually have in another handheld. I end up plopping it in this thing, and that's good to go. This one, though, is just completely shot, which I actually almost threw this package thing right here away. I didn't know what it was. Just quick glance, I was like, oh, it's just a throwaway thing. It actually had the other micro SD card that I had in the ROG. They didn't leave it in there. So I ended up testing this out as well. This was the replacement that I got for the one that was fried, but it wouldn't even allow me to format this. That's where I was like, all right, there's something else going on that's just beyond it being a bad micro SD card. There's something wrong with the reader. I did test the old card out though. So the card that I had in here was one from the other 1X Player 2 is what I had it in. Put the old card that was the replacement for the broken one in here. And this is really just footage of me showcasing that I could reformat this. Now it did ask me to repair the drive, which I think that was just because I was trying to mess with it before the card reader was updated, but after that it formats, and then I installed Diablo 4 on this. I have tested this out and it's running fine, and I did test this out for a handful of hours just to make sure. The main footage in the video here though is actually with the micro SD card that was in the 1X Player 2, because it just had everything pre-installed on it. But again, not showing this on camera. I did install some games on it, I tested it, and everything's been running fine on this card. Now, I've only tested that for a couple of hours, but with the other micro SD card, I ended up putting about 15 hours of gameplay on this at 25 and 15 watts with this, and then plugged in you get the 30. So I've tried to play a handful of hours just across the different wattages with this to make sure, especially at that 2530, because that's where we're running into these issues, and I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't happen again. But again, I've only done about 15 hours. I haven't put in 30, 40 hours with this, so we'll see, fingers crossed. And I've done all the latest updates as well. So that's going to be the BIOS, but also through Armory Crate. But at this point, if this ends up failing again, I could send it in to get it replaced. And by the way, if you do that, it was a pretty seamless process. They do pay for the shipping, so you don't have to cover that cost. And it took about 2.5 weeks for me to send it to them to repair it, and then send it back to me. But if I have to potentially go through that again, I'm thinking I'm just going to skip that and then update the M.2 in this, which would be a bit of a bummer to have to do. But with that, they are coming down in price, which is nice. I wish we had just higher storage versions of this, just like the Steam Deck, where we could choose one that has maybe 1 terabyte of storage or 2. We could maybe even customize a little bit, and then they would handle that on their end before they send it to you. That way you don't have to open this thing up and replace it yourself. But with that being said, after getting this back, I have noticed that loading screens, it's not every single time, but sometimes, man, they are a lot longer than when I first got this. So I think that may have more to do with the recent updates, and I know that they're trying to address some of that, just looking at the notes on, especially with the Armory Crate, some of the updates that they've done there. But in general, I've noticed sometimes things take longer to load, which not a huge fan of when it was fast before and now it's taking longer. But let's go ahead and get into gameplay stuff with this, because this is me running Diablo 4. This is off of the micro SD card here, and looking at the wattage, that is the 25 watts. I do mess around with some of the settings, so I do this at 720p and then I jump up to 1080p, and I just increase the demand on the system here to see, hey, is this going to be okay? But like I mentioned, I've played this 12 to 15 hours without any issues. There are the occasional things like, yes, longer loading screens when I'm trying to boot this up, or sometimes it gets stuck in this loop where it will try to like wake up from sleep, and then it's almost like it just freezes up on me, and so I just shut the whole thing down, turn it on, and then it's good to go for whatever reason. Other times I'll be booting this up, I'll start the process of trying to get something going, and then it just like shuts itself down. That's pretty rare that happens, but when it does, it's a minor inconvenience. But when you pay a good amount of money for something, you're like, hey, this shouldn't be doing this. It's a bit of a bummer. Again, doesn't happen all the time, but once in a blue moon when it does happen, it's a little frustrating with this. In terms of the games that I tested, though, that I'm going to showcase here, it's going to be Diablo 4, Destiny 2, and then Horizon Zero Dawn. And I've had no issues since the recording of these videos here. And actually what initially kicked off me knowing that I had a problem with the ROG was actually the fact that Diablo 4, it wouldn't boot, and then it actually said that it didn't even exist. So I go to try and boot it, it attempts, and it's like, this isn't a thing. And then it says install. And then I go to the micro SD card, and it's like, it would be there for a second and then it would disappear. So I'd take it out, I'd put it back in. And then sometimes I could pull it up, and then I'd go to look for the stuff, and it's like blank folders. That's where I took it and put it into the PC. I could see all the files in those folders were there. I didn't mess with trying to boot them from the computer at that point. And I was like, all right, I just know that they're there. And then went ahead and got the new card, and that's where it's like, oh, it can't even format this. It can't do anything. And I knew I had a problem. So to close this out, some thoughts on this that I had, that I just wanted everybody else's opinion on this. I do like the fact that ROG has addressed this publicly and said, hey, we know that there's an issue. They've said, hey, send this into us. We will actually repair this. They pay for that cost for you to send it to them, which is great. Some companies don't do that. They expect that you're going to actually ship it, and you're going to pay for that to ship it to them. And then on top of this, once you get this back, inside of this, it says, hey, you get an extended month on the warranty because there's been this issue. So they don't have to do that, but they give that. Now, some people may say, well, we need more than that. The 1 month isn't enough. But again, they don't actually have to do that at all because you get a 1-year warranty on this thing, but they extend it by that 1 month, which is great. So with this being a larger company, they have those resources in place to be able to provide these services. So personally, I think they've handled this quite well. They've publicly addressed this. They've extended the warranty by a month if you send this in. They cover the shipping with this, and they're doing things on the BIOS and the Armory Crate side in terms of updates to try to make sure that they can address this, which not every company does that. NZXT, which for those that maybe don't know or don't remember, where they had the whole controversy with the H1 case catching on fire. They tried to sweep that under the rug before Gamers Nexus exposed everything, and then they finally, like months down the road, tried to correct it. My point being that sometimes these companies are shady when they're dealing with these issues, because I know it's going to be something that's going to cost them a lot of money, and maybe they're trying to just think like, hey, do we have a workaround? What's the PR disaster that's going to happen with this? But it's better to just come out and say, hey, we found this issue. We know it's an issue. We're going to try to correct it. We're going to do everything to make sure that everybody's product is taken care of. And I feel like ROG, for the most part, has done that. Which, do you pronounce it ROG or ROG? I keep saying ROG in these videos, and then I'll watch other ones and they say ROG. I just don't like saying ROG. I say ROG Ally, ROG Ally. You guys let me know in the comment section on that one, because if I'm saying it that way and it's annoying everybody, I will make sure I say it the other way. But it's just, I don't know, it sounds easier to say just saying ROG Ally here. But with this heating issue, it gets me thinking about other companies. So AONEO is just doing this Indiegogo campaign. They have another handheld coming out, and you have these other companies, they're turning them out so quick. AONEO just launched a couple earlier this year, and they're already launching this one. This has got to be like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th one that they're launching this year. So this one is called the AONEO Kun, and this has the AMD 7840U in it. The big thing here, we have a 75 watt hour battery in it. That's like laptop size, and then it has a 54 watt TDP mode. I just am looking at this thinking about heating issues. The performance is probably going to be great, right? But I want to say I saw a video which I since can't find, so I wonder if it got pulled. I want to say it was from ETA Prime, but I can't find it now, where he was talking about that, and there's one snippet in his video where he says AMD, they don't recommend that high of TDP for these processors when it's in a handheld. I'm not 100% sure on that. I want to say I saw that, but I can't find the video now. I want to say it got pulled. But anyways, regardless of that, that's just a high wattage just in that handheld. I just think about the heat here. So hopefully they have really good fans and fan curves with this, and the thermal paste is good and all that. I just see this creating an issue where we may see certain things malfunction in this. Now the good news is they actually have a kickstand on the back, and underneath that is the micro SD card reader. So it's actually on the opposite end towards the bottom, away from all of that heat. So fingers crossed that does help. But again, I'm just very curious to see once this is fully released and people can test this, not just kind of the overview videos that we're seeing right now. I want to see what the data is going to show on this and how hot everything gets. It may be fine, but it may not be. And ultimately, my concern here, these companies, they are pumping out a lot of products. They're not as big as Asus, right? ROG here, or Valve. So their infrastructure for being able to repair these just isn't going to be quite as good. Luckily, I've not had to send back any of my products like the One X Player 2. I've heard, of course, horror stories with this where people have a hard time getting a hold of the company or sending it back, or they refuse to actually service it and things like that. That's probably going to be the worst thing, obviously, that you would hear with any of these products. And I've not had to do that, so I can't confirm on whether or not that is true. I would hope that wouldn't be the case. But if it is, that's obviously going to be a big bummer, because these things are not cheap. You're talking about spending $1,000+ on a lot of these. So at the end of the day, my main concern is we get these bigger handhelds with higher TDPs, but if something goes wrong, are you going to get the same service as you would with the ROG or the ROG Ally? Can you get it sent back to them for free where they cover that cost? Can you get a quick turnaround where you're going to get it back in 2 to 3 weeks at no expense to you and that it's fixed? And so that's another area where I want to hear from everybody in the community. What do you think about that? So not only how do you feel about what's going on with the ROG Ally and this issue, their response to that issue, but also looking at these other companies. We get these higher TDPs if they have potential issues, or maybe you do have one of those other devices and you've had issues. What do you think about your experience in getting that fixed if you do have one? If you don't, do you have concerns like I have concerns about the fact that these aren't the same major company as Asus, so the infrastructure just isn't quite there to get these repairs done, especially when they're turning out 4, 5, 6 of these different items, and they're on the hardware sales side, where if it's just a quick turnaround like that, I can only imagine like how long are they actually going to service that device compared to, I expect that the ROG Ally, we're going to have service on this for quite some time, at least the next handful of years, where if I buy an AO Neo or a 1X player and it's been a year and they've come out with another 4, 5, 6 devices, they're like, oh, we don't really service that anymore because that's too many generations ago. We don't mess with those. We only did the small batch run of those and then we were done. That would be my main concern here, but I want to hear from you guys on this. And by the way, if you have any questions about my experience or anything that I didn't cover in this video in respect to the ROG Ally here, let me know in the comment section. Also, I will make sure to answer that for you there. That is going to wrap this video up, everybody. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.